You're live! Exclamation point. I always feel like sweat drop. Am I though? In a cosmic sense, are any of us ever live? Welcome back, everyone. I'm just making sure that everything hooks in before we get started. So, an exciting stream today. We got through the sort of literal early game during the last stream, and now I've had time to figure out what we are missing for future streams. For example, this build has like literally no talismans. I think we haven't gotten a single talisman the entire time I've been playing so far, which is, you know, is not perfectly ideal. And there are some good talismans for this build available early on. Let's see if we have literally any. Yeah, I mean, you know, like an assortment here and there, sure. Look, this is fine. I could see this build wanting to guard counter here and there. Of course, the problem is that to guard counter, you need to guard and then counter. And I want to have my Dragon Communion Seal in one hand a lot of the time. You know, doing damage over time, I guess. You do poison, Scarlet Rot, whatever. I suppose after you've applied those, it's feasible that I might want to switch to a shield. And certainly I'll run out of FP to cast spells. That's been an early game problem this build has had that I didn't like fully anticipate. So yeah, you know, it's okay. But you know, there are things from talismans I can think of that I want much more than this, that are just like on the ground in the open world. So we'll probably start by doing that today. And then, yeah, kill Godrick, which is a pretty big deal for builds like this because it gets me a variety of stats. Now, I don't want every single stat, but it's pretty darn close. Faith and Arcane, super urgent. I would benefit a lot from getting more of either of those. And then Vigor, Mind, and Endurance. It's early enough in the game that I, again, pretty badly want all of those things. Strength and Dexterity will still increase my damage from melee attacks, which is very significant at this early stage. And then Intelligence, yeah, whatever. But that's still like 35 levels worth of stats. Godrick's rune can be a pretty big deal. So I think we want to get talismans and then unlock that today. There's a few little like odds and ends of powering up the build that I'm probably going to do before we do anything else. Get a couple of talismans that are relevant to the build. There are a few really good ones that are easy to get. There's like a little bit of shopping that we can get done that just gives the build more power. And then, yeah, I think realistically, kill Godrick and activate his rune, you know, do the tower to activate his rune, which should be very easily. It sounds like I'm saying activate his room. Boom, 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 boom. I want you in my room. Godrick. We'll spend the night together in my room. And I'm posting the day one of the Dragon Communion arc as a stream archive. Just a quick note about that. YouTube didn't render or like finish processing that video as quickly as I'd hoped. So there are some timestamps on that video, but they might be slightly off. Sorry, I'll correct them as soon as I can. I'm still kind of getting to grips with the schedule, but I'm trying to prioritize having everything actually come out. So I apologize for it being a little bit bumpy. It should be hammered out in short order. But yeah, the idea is that when those stream archives go live on YouTube, each of these going up means that the next week's, you know, stream is starting. They're like a notification and an archive at the same time. And I think that will hopefully be very helpful. I guess we'll see. There'll be a notification in each of those archives comments as well that is intended to tell you that it exists, and if you're watching this for the first few hours, hey, we're streaming, and then I go back and delete that comment later. So yeah, you can use them as notifications, which I think might be easier for some people, and then also like just as an archive to catch up if you want. Asymptomatic, welcome back. Bionic Me, welcome back. Is it still an overnight bake job? What, the the stream archives? That's an interesting way to word it. Yeah, I mean, it's fine from a time management perspective. You know, I have a lot of stuff about my work in general and videos you can expect in the future to talk about that I'm mostly really excited about, but I don't want to talk about it too much before I do it. I think that's a really good like rule of thumb for not, you know, getting things done in life, is you should be careful not to discuss things too much before you've done them. So just to say, I'm quite excited about that, but it's been busy. This has been a very busy couple of weeks. I sort of got over a real life disaster. I mean, this is my job. This is my real life, but you know what I mean? Like unrelated to work disaster last week. And this week, a lot of creative, I don't know, like ideological breakthroughs. Feeling good, but very busy. It's going to be a very busy few months, and then everything will be great. And that's, I mean, it's actually great now. I feel much better. But yeah, it's been hectic. Fortunately, asymptomatic, I don't have to upload the stream archive from my computer. You can get Twitch to do that for you. If you stream, I would highly recommend that you take advantage of this. It's really valuable. That helps a ton in just like getting stuff done in a timely manner. So yeah, definitely do that. You can absolutely just like go to Twitch and say export and then flag a channel as the channel you want to send it to, and then fiddle around with it once it arrives. And that's really helpful. Again, you save a huge amount of active time on your computer where it doesn't need to be using a bunch of processing power, like rendering and exporting the video like you would a file from, you know, whatever video editing software. That would be very time consuming indeed for your internet connection or rendering or whatever it would be that you would use for that. There's a few ways you could do that, and they all suck, and you should have Twitch do it instead. And then I needed to just like futz with the beginning because it's quite start and stop. I don't want people to see the very first stream archive and then there's like nothing going on, much like what's happening right now. So we bought a couple of smithing stones from EG because I realized these got some 3s and 4s. But what we're going to do at the beginning here is go grab a couple of talismans. Just do some early game shopping around. Like, as you can see, we don't really have any relevant talismans for this build. We got the relevant tiers for the Flask of Wondrous Physics, so that actually does something useful now. But this build is still leaving a lot of power on the table for just not having stuff in a lot of its slots, and we can do that pretty easily, pretty early on. So I'm going to go do that now. There's something here-ish. I'll look at my guidebook. Welcome back, Bionic Me. How you doing? Shame I missed last week's streams. The subjects being discussed in them seemed interesting, but alas, I was on a trip. Alas, but I hope that the stream archive is still interesting to you, useful in some way. Decided to change my muscle memory on torrent. So let me just do that. We really want this jellyfish around. Great. Okay, I think it's here. Solvable Iowa, welcome back. You said, I think that place is the talisman that has +5 faith. That's what I'm looking for. Good confirmation. Yep. So there's a talisman that gives you, there's a whole series of talismans that give you +5 to a stat for, I think, every stat. And right now, +5 faith is pretty sick. Arcane wouldn't be bad either, I don't think, but I'm just gonna get this first. I actually don't know where this is. So in fact, I haven't been to this area before, to my knowledge, so I'm just going to do this whole environment. I hate those dogs. Where's that dog? Sorry, I like dogs. Don't like these dogs. Get them out of there. It's too bad. They're cute when you look at them, but... Hee-haw. Yeah. That's pretty good. We're on the board. Think about where we started last stream, and now we're doing this. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, no, no. Yeah. Look at that stagger damage. That was nice. We need runes anyway, too, so this is a happy accident. There's like some hidden floor panels or something here that we need to destroy to get the item I want, and I would rather search for them without being molested by these enemies. Happy to just drink a ton of flasks. We're clearly gonna rest after this, so it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. It's fine. It's okay. Fighting a whole crowd is something this build should be very good at. Okay. So he said. Righty Bro, welcome back. You said, ahoy, not sure how sweet anything that's related to Dragon Communion would taste, but hey, what would I know of Dragon Heart Pie? Dragon Heart Pie sounds kind of tasty when you put it that way. Probably not that good. You're probably a bit gamey, right? Make sure I get my runes. Not that, but that's good too. Maybe we won't kill all these enemies, and instead I'll just Rambo around until I find the, the thing I want. My notes say that there's like a thing of barrels. Oh, yay. That worked so well, wow. I think there's a stone sword key. Do you need a key? Maybe. Let's also make sure we don't get followed. I think the AI is told not to follow, but we can actually take advantage of that too. Yeah. Hey, a dagger too. Okay. No, they didn't like that. They're like, you're enough of your cheese tarnished. Did you bring Swiss or Gouda tarnished? Okay. Yeah, this build is a piece of paper. We need to put some points in vigor ASAP. So I do really want to kill enemies as much as possible because we need the stats. I also need to learn the spacing on a lot of these spells. Obviously, that's part of the problem here. Brass shield, nice. Good drop. Yeah, the very useful medium shield with good weight and 100%. Here, I'll show you. I know a lot of you already know what this is. Oh, we already had one. Yeah. Not a huge deal, but it's good. And it has good guard boost, which is when you block, you lose a certain amount of stamina. Guard boost makes you higher guard boost number means you lose less stamina when you block. So good physical damage negation plus good guard boost means you can block a lot of stuff. There it is. And then what's this? Okay. A grape. By faith. Sweet. Check that off the old guidebook. Yeah, we already had a we already had one of that item. The 2 fingers heirloom. The way that White Mask Vare says 2 fingers is permanently seared into my brain. The 2 fingers cannot be trusted. I'm not doing it very well, but you know what I mean. He just says it in such a, the voice actor says it in a very smarmy way. Sitting there listening to the proclamations of the 2 fingers. Yugi boy. Like, okay. Let's just kill this guy. This probably isn't going to be that difficult for the build where it is now, so let's just kill him for runes. No, give me the boss. Hee-haw. Whoa, okay, that was bad. Uh-oh, maybe this isn't as okay as I thought. Oh, no, they're probably fine. The problem is this enemy probably isn't vulnerable to most statuses. This is an example of a place where this build might have some trouble. But, I mean, we do have stuff like Dragon Claw. And that's the thing with the oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, no, just kidding. This is trivial. This is one of the places I had called out as being a place where the Dragon Communion Seal might struggle, because we don't do very good raw damage in that I'm building a lot of arcane for status. But the thing is that the Dragon Communion Seal happens to also just, for some reason, be really, really good at dealing raw damage. It's just a good scaling seal. Now, in the long run, I'm not sure that's going to be that useful for our build, because in this playthrough, I'm going to favor arcane heavily. So I think eventually the damage is going to fall off a bit, the raw damage. But by that time, I'll have a lot of options for raw damage too. I don't know. It's not going to be that bad. It's going to end up being fine, provided we learn what spells, like what tactics does this build want to use against enemies that are not vulnerable to status. And it was, so I mean, Dragon Claw, I guess, surprising no one who's used this ridiculously strong ability before. I thought you could backstab him. I think you can backstab him, I was just too slow. Yeah, pretty easy cheesy for now, but you can imagine how a harder version of an enemy like this would be a little challenging for this build, because we lose a lot of our tools against enemies that aren't vulnerable to status. Again, I think in the future, for some harder fights, it will be that I will want to look up Like, okay, what statuses is this enemy vulnerable to? The other thing about incantations, though, is you get a little bit of a lot of different damage types. So you can often exploit the elemental weakness if they have one of the enemy. And enemies in Elden Ring do tend to have that RPG-like feature. It's insane to me how many games include that design of like enemies having Pokemon-like elemental weaknesses without, in my opinion, there being any clear reason for the game to use that design. But in Elden Ring, I feel like it makes some sense, and the vulnerabilities and resistances aren't like that extreme. I don't know. I'm open to opinions about that. I still feel like I don't totally understand why that design has been so prominent. Okay, my guidebook says the green turtle talisman is in here, but requires a stone sword key. So it's probably set into the ground, and then you need a stone sword key. So let's look for a thing you can go into. Like a little dugout thingy that would take a stone sword key. I've been here a lot, but I don't remember where that would be. There is a scythe that you can farm from some enemies, and these are some of them. That guy with a scythe. But the drop chance is really low. My partner is a massive nerd about scythes. She loves scythes. Anything with a scythe, like just give it to me. She loves that. And here it is. And she actually did farm it out. She went here and just straight farmed that a bunch of times and got it, which I do not have the patience to do. And so I know that I'm not, and it's not that relevant to this build. A lot of the scythes do have blood loss build up, but they don't scale with arcane. So without a way to change them to scale with arcane, it doesn't really do anything for us. And there's a ton of weapons with blood loss, like it doesn't especially matter. We can buy a stone sword key here. It's just kind of too bad because I also want to buy this memory stone from the Finger Crones. Let's see if we got 800. Just barely gets me there, I think. Hey, nice. Okay. Another spell slot. Then we'll go back, crack that sucker open. The dirty summoner by proxy dragon breath returns. Ah, yes. Your, I don't mean, for once I mean pedantic in a playful way instead of me frequently considering pedantry to be one of the worst crimes a human can commit. But in this case, I don't think it actually matters that much. The pedantic, but I think in a funny way, complaint that it's like summoning a summon to use the dragon breath abilities because a dragon head appears. Asymptomatic, in the same vein of that complaint, do you view dragon claw as being like a summon because it summons a hand? Like, is this like a summon as well? Now, be aware, people who've played or are online enough about Elden Ring, there's this common complaint where people don't like people using the summons in Elden Ring because they have decided for themselves that they don't think that's part of the game. And that's one thing. Just to be clear, it seems like Asymptomatic's complaint here is more generally about like doing things solo more broadly. People aren't arguing that you're like using in-game Spirit Ash summons if you use the Dragon Communion incantations. It's an aesthetics thing. It's not the same complaint as that. This increases your stamina recovery speed by it's like around 15%. I feel like that's very good as a generalist thing in the early game. There is also a shield that's like a turtle shell that increases your stamina recovery speed by a lot. That could be good to have, but I didn't put that on the list, and I feel like this build kind of doesn't want to have to pay the weight. You know, one of the things that this build has some concerns with is the need to build a ton of a bunch of different stats. Like kind of reducing the stats is valuable here. We're gonna want vigor, mind, faith, and arcane fairly high. So anything else I can drop, I want to drop. And so endurance gets to the chopping block. And endurance governs how much stamina you have, but also what carry weight you can have, how many items worth of weight you can have equipped before you start getting a bad dodge roll. So a shield is a pretty obvious piece of equipment to eliminate like soon down the line. Probably around the time I do Rhea Lucaria, I'll respec right away. That unlocks the ability to respec. We'll do that boss, I'll respec, and I will remove most of this build's strength, dexterity, and endurance, and put those into like other relevant stats. I don't think that this build is going to feel that great if we split it too much. You know, the payoff with incantations that scale status is pretty tenuous to begin with, I think. And so it's not, I don't think it's going to be pleasant if we let that get too out of hand. Now, as you can see, we don't have Jack for runes. I had to spend them to get a lot of that stuff. So we're going to do a couple of other like loose things just to get money, and then I'll use that to upgrade the Dragon Communion Seal a little more because we bought those smithing stones, and then we can probably kill Godrick today. Seems like a realistic goal. I don't know, we might be able to kill him now. My health is just really low for that fight currently, in my opinion. I feel like that will be mildly frustrating, so I think it's worth doing a detour to do some content, as it were. Maybe fight these guys a little. Hey, yeah. You think, in your great arrogance, that will threaten me and you? Okay. Yeah. One of the things I love about faith builds is being able to kill those stupid dragonflies. I hate the dragonfly enemies. All the bugs in this game, I just like stop. I hate them. Don't really mind insects that much in real life, but just get them out of here in the context of this game. I believe this is another one of the towers that you can do. Like, this is another one of the hidden turtles ones. Yeah, which we might as well. Again, these all give spell slots. I don't think we really need more now because we don't have enough good spells to get, like, to use. We have enough that I can equip basically every relevant incantation, and honestly then some, in my opinion. But I still think, you know, in the long run we're going to do this anyway, and I need runes, so I guess this kind of doesn't give runes, so maybe that isn't efficient, but that's why I'm doing it anyway. You have like a throwable? There we go. Sorry. Poor turtle. And then there's one that's like down on the side, maybe the opposite side. For better or worse, I have a good memory for this kind of stuff, so we should be able to do it without too much fuss. I think it was on that other side. I must have been remembering that one I just killed. There's a site of grace here too. Let's get that quickly. Coming back to a few topics. Asymptomatic, you said the dragon breath is mostly an aesthetic complaint. Instantaneous effects like a limb or weapon are generally not going to trigger my allergies. I like referring to them as allergies. Asymptomatic. I see. Yeah, so it's mostly it being a head. For what it's worth, I hate to be like a downer. I think it's fine if people like the big dragon head breathing, but I personally think it looks kind of clunky. I sort of like there's some later ones that are just, they really commit, you know, are just an incredibly energetic dragon head breath attack. I can kind of get down with those, I guess, but for the normal dragon heads popping out of you and breathing, I don't like. I want my guy to breathe the dragon breath like that. I don't want it to be something else. I don't like them aesthetically, but it's not because I have an ally with me, you know. It's not the thing isn't. That's not the same complaint for me anyway. I was just curious. Is that a scythe in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? Since the curve of the classical scythe would make pocketing it quite suggestive. I feel like it would not look like you had popped a heart on if you had a scythe in your pocket. I feel like the scythe would just be it jutting out of your pants in a comical fashion. I don't. And that's fine if that's what people are into, but I feel like that's not suggestive. It's too bent. I don't know. Do I have to explain this? Where's the last turtle? It's like on the edge somewhere, or like out here. Yeah, there it is. Wow, I did know where it was. Look at that. Sorry, buddy. It's fine, he's not real. That's not very nice, Ragnavar. They're spectral. They're spectral turtles. They deserve to exist too. I don't know. We were gonna get back to that topic about like why the elemental weaknesses insistence that these games often have. Like I just don't understand that. Again, my claim is that that's more prevalent than developers have thought about it. That there are more games that have like, oh, this enemy is weak to fire damage. That's in a huge number of games that I am confident claiming the developer did not like have a good reason to put that in. It's just like a thing you do in RPGs, quote unquote, and they view that as being a good reason to put it in, which it is not. I hate these systems, so I'm definitely also reverse biased. If all things being equal, even if they were a good flavor fit, I would not want them in the game. I don't like them. I feel like they're bad until proven good, and nobody can tell me what is good about them. I myself have like one thing to defend elemental vulnerabilities as the system with, so I don't know. Let's get into that. Does this fit as a topic? Close enough, yeah. Sure. So we did our a lot of little errands. Cool. I'll see what we have for other spells. I feel like we might have literally every incantation I've gotten so far equipped, but we might as well check. That seems worthwhile. But yeah, the idea being that these types of games, we do have literally every spell I can use equip. Okay, well, it's fine. We got those done for the future. That I would have needed to do that anyway. I'm gonna go do this. This gives you the infinite somber smithing, normal smithing stones 1 and 2. So it will let me upgrade normal weapons a little bit without needing to worry about having enough smithing stones, which will be important for fussing around with the build in the long run. So I'm gonna chip away at those, getting the infinite bell bearings. And of course, doing this dungeon will get me some money, which will allow us to upgrade the seal with the ones we have. Yeah, basically just the idea that, you know, a given enemy in, let's say, Elden Ring will resist fire and holy damage, but be vulnerable to cold damage and strike damage or something. And often the reason will be flavor, like a simple reason that people often cite for these systems being in games is the flavor. Bionic Bee said, I love elemental systems for the flavor, but yeah, the function sometimes befuddles me. I kind of get it from a flavor perspective. There's this idea in fantasy and just like magic fiction in general that there are some set rules that we kind of take as a granted in magic systems. And one of them is that if something has a type of damage or power, it is resistant to a type of damage or power. And so, like, if an enemy does holy damage, RPGs, I guess, have taught us that this means that enemy is resistant to your holy damage. Like, I'm not trying to be persnickety, but why, though? You know, from a game design perspective, what game tension does that create? Is that good? Is it beneficial for that to be the case? It's something people do mostly take as a given, but why? And then there's sometimes the trope, the one that comes to mind for me is dragon types in Pokemon. Yep, exactly. Where it's the opposite. There are some, like, I think of them as berserker types, where this is vulnerable to itself, or like isn't defended against itself, or maybe anything, depending on the type. And so that's an alternate, like, flavor, if you will, of those. Now, I would say this is not the same as different damage types having mechanics. I'm not saying I think that is bad until proven good. I feel like it's pretty clear why that can be good. So Solvable Iowa, that's a good example. Like in Elden Ring, one thing I do like about damage types is thrust type weapons, stabby weapons. Having more damage on counter hits gives thrusters a flavor the others don't have. The idea is that if you're attacking an enemy by stabbing something into them and they're moving toward you, that is, they're attacking you, then that would do more damage. They're kind of driving your weapon into their body, and so it does more damage. I just feel like that type of immersion or like granular detail is, I hate to make a negative thing out of a positive thing. I just feel like that is actually kind of jarring in a game that doesn't really otherwise contain details like that, if that makes sense. Like, as you say, it gives it flavor that other weapon types don't have, but I actually think that's kind of awkward and sort of not all good. See, I would just run by all of these enemies, but I need the money on their bodies. So here's what we're gonna do. Like, it would be cool to have that in a game that had more of it, I guess is how I feel. But because Elden Ring and a lot of games have... It's like the exception. There's just like one or two weird little cases where a damage type works a little differently than others. I feel like it's just sort of awkward and makes the game's learning curve a bit confusing. For example, if you instead had it be that every weapon type has like one unique thing, that is, in my opinion, better unintuitively for learning, because it puts the player in a situation where they know there's just like one thing they need to learn for each damage type. But in Elden Ring, I believe thrusting damage is the exception rather than the rule, which again, that's fine. I wanted to point out that I think it is kind of awkward. Okay, he's yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it is clunky, right? If you're used to the Souls games, you would get used to it. Again, and I think that's what it is for a lot of people with this entire topic, right? Is that for them it doesn't seem weird for the game to privilege, like, you know, oh, when an enemy does holy damage, they're resistant to holy damage. But I don't know, I just like, isn't that a little strange? No? I feel like that's weird. I'm just doing this to open up this shortcut, because I'm gonna die. I think pretty clearly. I just thought I would pick up some smithing stones on the side, but we don't need them that badly. There's loot in there, but I feel like it's not worth me almost certainly dying. Maybe I'll just kite a bunch of these enemies into one spot and then kill them with Dragon Claw. Or this. But yeah, like those two guys. Again, we do need to kill stuff. We're just like slightly under-leveled for this area. And again, I really want to preserve resources so we don't have to keep going back down here like 5 times. One of these, there's an enemy behind you. But basically the complaint I have is that I feel like a lot of these elemental weakness things in games don't like clearly serve a game design purpose. They feel like very game design second ideas, and I am pretty much always against that. I guess I might sound like a bit of a broken record with that kind of thing, but I guess I just feel like for a long time now, a lot of video games have put like the game being a good game not at the front of the priority list, and that frustrates me. And I feel like you can do that and you can sort of always make the flavor work. Like it's really easy to just like find ways to make it make sense. It doesn't really make sense that, you know, you use a type of damage and therefore you're more vulnerable to it. For example, a trope in some fiction is that I'm just going to accept that we're going to die, so let me just get my loot, and then I'll just run all the way back down and the boss is right there. You know, you use fire abilities, and so if other people heat you up or use more fire abilities, then the character can overheat. That's like a reasonably common trope, nowhere near as common as people being resistant to fire because they have fire abilities. But I feel like every single elemental damage system in games is Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I also like having things that are not Avatar: The Last Airbender. You know? Why does being able to throw a fireball make a fireball hurt you less? That doesn't make sense. I don't like it. World building Zandy goes burr. See you later, nerd. Okay, well. Okay. All right, let me focus for a sec while I... people also brought up blunt attacks doing more poise damage. Good, in my opinion. Even with attacks that share the same moveset. But again, obscure in the game does not tell you. That's another thing, of course. I mean, I don't want to lampoon the idea of different damage types have different effects and like different vulnerabilities and stuff just because the game does not tell you those things. That is bad, but I'm willing to... I think we should not hold damage vulnerabilities accountable for the entire industry failing to communicate well in basically every build system. That's not the fault of the damage. Not that it sounds like you're saying it is. I'm just saying I'm willing to look the other way about that in this case. That is a whole separate thing we need to tackle, is games actually telling you like anything about what's going on in the game. Sure, yeah, right. It goes without saying that's bad that they don't do that. We could at least make it a good system once they tell the player. Now, sure, as a diversion, I mean, if you made games constantly tell the player the vulnerabilities and weaknesses of enemies they fought, would that not force developers to think a bit more about what decisions they're making for those weaknesses and vulnerabilities, being that they have to tell everybody what they are? Could it be that we've gotten less progress on these systems making more sense, partly because people usually just don't say in the game what the things are, and so players don't go, hey, that's sort of weird. Huh, why is it like that? You know, the game just doesn't say. And there are games that say, but... Right. Bionic Me, water beats fire. The remaining relationship between the four classical elements is up to significant variation. It is. I mean, it really is. And humans can think of anything for a pattern, you know? Asymptomatic, you said, and then we go full Limbus and get 21 functional damage vectors because 3 physical damage types plus 7 colors, and there's no pattern other than learning what a particular faction is weak to. Right? I mean... that is one of the more glaring examples, absolutely, right? That does make it worse. If you're gonna do the thing everyone else is doing, you could at least do the one we already learned. Limbus Company is like, no, hold my beer, we're just changing everything. So, yeah, Right, asymptomatic, you said, I like advanced or like systemic weapon triangles of weaknesses, like in Fire Emblem, reputedly being told, like, fire is good against flesh, but is poor against metal. Only goes so far when I fight a giant lizard and the weakness is not clear. Right, that doesn't... I don't know. Like, but exactly, it's not like some games don't try. It just... Do they not understand that that doesn't make it clear? And I will say, game developers, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I think this is mostly an honest misunderstanding of how much better it would be if you did tell players. I don't think a lot of game developers are going, this makes total sense, and players will just always have the wiki open on a second monitor 100% of the time. I think they're just not thinking about it that much, and if they did think about it, they're smart and they would mostly see that that is some kind of issue. And then some of them would say, oh, but I like intend players to look it up on the internet, and I think that's stupid, but like fine, that's a legitimate viewpoint. Or they would say, oh, well, I intend players to just experiment and find out what the enemy's weak to. I think that's also stupid, but that is a legitimate opinion. Like, whatever, we just disagree. I think most developers have just not thought about this that much. It's not that they're just morons and have no good opinion about it, or would have no good opinion. They do have no good opinion about it, but they would maybe have a reasonable opinion about it, I think. I think humans are really smart. And usually when something is not smart, it's usually because there was a lack of thinking, not usually bad thinking, in my opinion. Maybe that's too optimistic or cutesy for some of you, but that's what I think. Pause here. Let me kill this boss. Crystallians are kind of interesting. They have like super armor poise and are hard to stagger, basically impossible to stagger, I think, until you break their sort of super poise and shatter them, quote unquote, at which point everything staggers them. So these are, in practice, very front-loaded boss fights. You just need to get them broken the first time, and then it's like mostly fine. Okay, that was a lot easier than I expected. Yep, and now we just... Yeehaw. Wow, that was really fast. I wonder if these guys are vulnerable to fire damage. I bet they are. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Yeah, that was good. Okay. Yeehaw. We're cooking with gas now. Now, see, the interesting thing, too, about doing this type of build is that because we do so much raw damage, but it takes so much mana, you get put in this interesting balance where if I can blow the enemy up before I run out of mana, most fights are going to be really easy. But just there, like, watch this. If I just do this one more time, I'm out of mana. I have 0 mana. So if the enemy was still alive, all my abilities are turned off now. So it's interesting, like you get this kind of racing, Wild West duel thing where you kind of race your mana bar down. That was an interesting approach to the I think I like that better rather than trying to roll my R's or something. But you get it. I've always thought that was kind of an interesting dynamic of this game's like glass cannon spellcasters. So yeah, that was easy. We will now clear this, which I put on the map before the stream, and go to the ladies so you can see me turning in the bell bearings, because we're going to do that a lot more times during this playthrough. So now we can buy infinite of the 2 first rank normal smithing stones. And this means that when I get new items later in the game, we don't have to worry about not being able to use them at all because we can't upgrade them to a high level, a relevant level. We now can just buy as many of these as we want. I believe they made a change and these also roll over to New Game Plus. So this save file now permanently never has to worry about this ever again. Again, I don't really know why it's a mechanic if it would be sort of asinine to not do the thing that makes it never matter again. And it's very strange. For this stream, I was working on the notes document, the guidebook document that I have, where I have like a basic notation of some of the stuff I want to get in this playthrough. I will link that. It's always linked in the description of these stream archives. I'll link it in the stream chat just in case people haven't seen it or want to see it again. I gave it like dark theme and put some quality of life in it. One of the things I updated for today was the smithing stones, the bell bearings, so that we can get infinite of them. Something very messed up and bizarre happened when I did that. I discovered that the game puts the later rank smithing stone bell bearings, infinite of the later rank smithing stones, is given to you practically guaranteed. It's like on the main path. You're probably not going to miss it. But the lower rank smithing stones from early in the game are super missable and are just in like obscure dungeons. Now that dungeon we just did, right? Like it's not that it's hard to find, but it's eminently optional. Like you could see plenty of players would not do this as well, right? It's not hard to find as such, but the idea that unless you do this one particular random small cave, you cannot use any smithing stones of the normal variety anyway, because you can't upgrade level 1 and 2. So if you have infinite of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but you didn't do this one cave, then you can't upgrade. You can't use any of those smithing stones unless you just find smithing stone 1 and 2 in sufficient quantities. But again, if you upgrade any significant number of weapons, it was my experience that you will not have enough. There will be players for whom this isn't a problem because they just don't upgrade a variety of weapons. And it wasn't a problem for me because I knew I hated this instantly and looked up where the smithing stone bell bearings were. But for a lot of players, if you plan to experiment with weapons, you just can't unless you know to do this one specific cave. Thankfully, the existence of the later smithing stones being on the main path does mean that a lot of players will probably at least realize that this must exist. You know, they will think, oh, you can get infinite of these higher rank smithing stones. That must mean there's a way to get infinite of the lower rank smithing stones. I will go seek out that thing. Okay, you know, that's better than nothing, sure. But why have you done this? Like, stop. Like, don't. Why are you like this, FromSoft? So I hate it. I just hate it. But that's how it is. And it's maddening that they guarantee you get the later game ones, but then not the early game ones, which means the later game ones might very likely be completely useless. That's just like, what? Why would you do it like that? You said they do put donut-shaped things on the minimap where important mines are, but also like why? Donut-shaped things. Do you mean this? The little graphic that shows the entrance to a cave? To my knowledge, that is not... You might be right. That I didn't think that indicated important caves. It's just caves. Like, that just is the entrance to a cave. They don't do it for all of them, and I don't believe I have felt like there was a pattern where they do it only for the important ones, I guess is my gripe. They just do it for some of them. If there is a pattern to that, that's interesting to know. I will just say I hope you will agree that a lot of people do not know that. It's always mines for smithing stones or for, glovewort, the thing that upgrades spirit ashes, right? Okay, I see. Maybe it's only for each of those two things. That's interesting. That's just very strange, though. I hope you'll agree. Like, why? I don't know. That I still think that's really bad, but it is nice to know that they made... I want to know everything they did to make it easier for the player to understand. That just isn't necessarily going to convince me that it doesn't suck to do it this way. But I want to know what they tried to do. I would hate for a developer to hear this and go, oh, he doesn't know that we actually did something to solve this problem. Like, okay, but don't be so complacent. That doesn't mean that it's a completely solved issue. It could still be improved. I feel like that's needlessly unclear. So I'm very happy you told me. You did. Please do tell me stuff like that. I'm not going to feel like, oh, I was an idiot and secretly didn't know this. Like, no, that doesn't bother me at all. That's kind of beside the point. I would rather know what they did do, and then we can decide. Another version of this topic that came up that was pretty interesting is... So when you get Spirit Ashes letting you add a summon... Oh. Uh-oh. A whole interface just popped up, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to turn it off. Okay. I hate that. Any extension or pop-up or whatever, I would pay several $100s to not have any bloatware on my computer. When you get Spirit Ashes, summons to help you in combat, the game does a lot more than usual to make sure that you do not skip the ability to get this. You can miss the trigger with Ronnie, where she gives you the bell and the wolf Spirit Ashes at this church. And if you do miss that, I believe there is a check where they will appear in the Round Table Hold, and you can just get them. You can miss recruiting Roderica to your Round Table Hold. She's in this shack, and she is the person who eventually lets you upgrade Spirit Ashes. As long as you talk to her when she's in your Round Table Hold, that develops. There might be a stop for her as well, but you see where I'm going with this, I'm sure. When I played Elden Ring through the first time, I just so happened to get both of those things. I did talk to Roderica organically. She is right on the path to Stormvale. And I did get the Ronnie event. I'm not complaining that these are obscure or not objectively, or that it was a problem for me or not. None of that matters. It's just, if there is a failsafe for these things, it would be easy to not know that. You see what I mean? So I would certainly want to know. Now, I still don't totally agree that it is good to be able to miss these things by that much. You know, I think the best example for me is that here, this first ruins that a lot of people will go to, you can go many other ways, you don't have to go here, but this first place you'll go to is where you unlock like the whetstone, the ability to put ashes of war on weapons. Now, I don't know if you get other whetstones, if that also lets you put ashes of war on things. It probably does, but there's like maybe 3 or 4 of them in the rest of the game, and a lot of them are much later in the game. If you don't have access to the ability to put special attacks on your weapon entirely, I think that's a very big deal for the game. That is a very core mechanic of the game. And I feel that players have kind of fetishized being able to miss these things, and I don't like it. I think that's silly, and that it doesn't actually do anything to benefit the game, but the online community is just a bit toxic, and so they're being quite apologetic for it. You just need to get good and have paranoidly looked up everything that could ever possibly exist. I am someone who got good and looked up everything that could ever possibly exist. I'm crazy, and that's just who I am. I wasn't even told to do that. I just am like that. But that's not a good argument. Like, if it's a core part of the game, I think the game ought to point you to it much more. Non-optional bosses to help with weapon upgrade progression, right? Because for many people, that part of the game just kind of doesn't exist. I think that's bad. Very bad. Anyway, we go. I think it's time. I think we just go in, shall we? We can come back to the elemental weakness thing as well. And honestly, I feel like it's good for me in general to get in the habit of bringing up these topics and then letting them sit for a bit, so that people who have never thought about the topic before have some time to kind of marinate. Sorry, gross. I'll do it with good ingredients. Soy sauce, some lime, perhaps. You can marinate in my soy sauce and lime of this topic, and then when we bring it up again, maybe people will have other stuff to say. I do have a few points of my own to make. Like, I think there are some maybe sort of good in one way things about elemental weaknesses in these games, but mostly I just hate them, and I think that they're often put in, like, not thoughtfully. I think is my main complaint always. Okay. Tea time equals boss time. Let's do this. What elemental type is soy and lime? Acid. Next question. Poison? Ground? Instead of marinate, how about ferment? Let grow the yeast of thought and mind. That's oddly poetic. Gross. Huh. Write that down. Write that down. Yeah, let's do this boss. To achieve a level of Zen. Rarely seen on these types of streams. We will, of course, be having my all-day breakfast. Sorry, we'll put you over here. This is a tea that is branded in a way with this child about to contract some salmonella from a giant stack of pancakes. It's a very interesting black tea that I've been chipping away at recently. So I'm going to make some of it, and then we're going to drink it between attempts of the boss to retain a state of calm and focus. Just like they used to do in the pro leagues, in the Elden Ring competitive scene. So it's pretty easy to do that. We'll just crack her open. Yeah. Pretty new cake, as you can see. I'm just going to take, I don't know how much this is. This is the right amount. It'll be fine. Pretty nice. It's a black tea. You can maybe sort of tell if you have experience looking at teas at all. And black tea is basically roasted tea. It's a pretty light roast. This is an interesting one. So it's not common in China to dry black tea in the sun, to my knowledge. But this is a thing that is done in other parts of the world, and that slower drying process has a mellowing effect, apparently, on the tea. And you can really taste that. It's got a lot of texture. It's like a tiny bit like thick or syrupy, subtle. You know, it still tastes like tea. It's not like whole milk or something, but it has a slight richness. And then, yeah, it's mild and all day breakfast. I don't know. It fits that vibe very well. brew up a cup. I am going to give it a quick rinse because, as you can see, it's packed into a little piece. So to make sure it actually opens up, I will give it a quick douse with water. And then keep that covered so it steams gently, which will open it back up. Because we have a wet setup here, I can just dump this into the tray. Don't gotta worry about it. Love that. Love that. Compared to a type of tea setup a lot of people have seen, this traditionally Chinese like wet setup is my favorite. To me, it's like tea makes so much tea, good quality tea, you get so much damn tea. I just want tea flying everywhere when we make tea, which maybe isn't good, like about 2 feet away from my electronics, but that easy come, easy go, you know, that's how it is. Why is this off? The thermos is just blatantly not on. That water was hot, which is why I'm puzzled. There we go. Okay, it had just turned off. We'll just leave that for a sec. My computer needs some zen too. No. The computer needs all day breakfast too, that's right. Give it a little sippy. I do, if it makes anyone feel better, because I know some people are appalled by me saying that instead of poking fun at it, which is, I think, yeah, totally. Of course the computer needs some. The computer tower is like over here. Tea setup is over there. It's not that bad. It's gonna be fine. I have a good setup for this. We got the wet tray. The tray is a really excessive size because I know I'm not gonna be paying that much attention. I'm gonna spill. You know, it's gonna be fine. What search terms can I use for this again, since all day breakfast leads me to some generic places? Sure, if you're interested in this tea, we don't really do sponsors on this channel, so I'm happy to just recommend these things to you if you want. This is Bitterleaf, a vendor I've been pretty enamored with and having a good time with lately. Particularly, I had talked about this more in the Tea Time streams, and we can talk about it more if you want. I think the thing I'm liking so much about Bitterleaf is that they're not focused on these types of teas. So when they carry 1 or 2 like black teas, for example, they pick like really interesting ones that would be satisfying as like a roll filler. And that's kind of what I want. I want a variety of types of tea. So give me 1 or 2 of the best or most interesting thing you've got. Not necessarily the highest quality, just something fun and interesting and that's a good versatile daily drinker. And I think that that's why they've done such a good job for me with types of tea they don't carry much of. This is one of like maybe 3 black teas on their entire website, but I really like it. So it's also really cheap. That's another good thing about this. I think this is another 10 cents a gram, ridiculously cheap. You can get like almost a liter of this tea brewed for like 40 cents, like absurdly cheap for how nice this is. So that's really good. If you haven't bought tea this way before, yeah, like buying $20 of it at once seems like maybe like a lot, but it isn't. That makes a ridiculous amount of tea. So if you want, yeah, sure, I recommend it. I think it's good. I will say that it's mild. I like it because it's mild. I wanted a mild black tea that has a kind of like interesting but still pretty subtle texture. It's not going to wow you. I just think it's good. Not the recommendation I would make if you are trying to explore tea necessarily. This would be more like that description sounds good and you've had a little bit of tea and you would like to try this now. Asymptomatic, maybe you would like it given what you'd had so far, but I don't know. Since we're naturally arriving at some of the stuff we talked about last week, did you end up watching anything we brought up? Watching? I'm sort of blanking on what you mean. Tell me a little bit more and it'll come back. Oh, the videos this time last week, Ragdavar. No, I've had no time at all. Last week was all fires, and then this week has been really busy for work. I noted it all down, but I haven't watched any of it yet. That's normal for me. It might be months before I watch any of that, and I very likely will. But it usually it will be a long time before I get back to that stuff. After all, there's tea to drink. Give it, with this ratio, maybe like 20 seconds. $15. Sometimes for the first steep of a tea that's a little bit together like this, still kind of compressed, I like to just roll it back in to help it open up a little bit more. But that looks pretty good. And I like this tea with not like that much strength on it. Like I'm fine with it being on the lighter side. And we go. A peaceful cup of tea, and then a bit of violence. Normal black tea color, a little light, I guess. What damage type is clove? Dark. I think a lot of people are just gonna say ground type. I'm gonna say dark type. Needs to cool off a little bit more. Rainovar, I'll put into the show notes having a channel for like recommendations, but I'm kind of happy for you to just do them loose. As well. Like sometimes people post stuff in the open channel that is just like loose recommendations they have on the Discord. We have a channel in the Discord that's for game recommendations targeted at the kind of person that might be in this community. And so Ragnavar is proposing having a channel for like other recommendations. I have two thoughts. First one is it's kind of fine to just do that where you'd like to do that. And second of all, it is always going to be a sort of tension between me and the people on a server that I think people should just not try to make it about a lot of stuff in their life. It's good for the server to not be about as many things as possible while still while not getting in the way, I guess. But the audience, the people on a server, are pretty much always going to want to just do whatever they want on the server, regardless of whether it fits. And I think the thing about this topic is it's a gray area topic. It doesn't obviously not fit or obviously fit. I think I mostly agree with you that it kind of slightly more does, because you're recommending videos that are similar-ish to my videos, like the kind of video I'm trying to make, especially in the future, though we'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm leaning toward maybe we should do that. Let me say just recommend them wherever you'd like to recommend them on the Discord for now, and I will keep it in the notes. But also the contemplation channel works pretty well. We have an open whatever topic you want discussion channel in the Discord that is slow mode enabled deliberately for like a more involved discussion to invite that. That seems like a decent place for this kind of thing too. We did also in the past have something that was like channels named for the days of the stream, which I don't think is a bad idea in theory. My career is just enough of a mess right now that I fell off the wagon on that. But yeah, that's an interesting idea as well. Yeah, like something flagged as from when it was isn't a bad thing, maybe. So yeah, I'll sit on that for a little bit. I'll add that to the notes, like day channels tied to stream days, but I personally feel like we should leave it alone for now, and I'll just keep that in the back of my mind. I put it in the stream notes. I've got a document just for these streams. Cheers, then let's go to war. Yeah. If you've ever had that thing in the United States that's like people will put, not that good quality tea bags, black tea bags, in like a big jar, like a cleaned out pretzel jar or whatever. Those big, you know, the Utz cheese balls, those big things, plastic drum looking guys. They'll put a bunch of, you know, whatever quality black tea bags in one of those, fill it with water, and then leave it out like on their porch, basically. And in the southern United States is what I associate this with. I don't know if that's correct. That's just where I've experienced it. When I was growing up, my folks' grandparents did this, and they'll say it's sun brewed tea, which they see as being like a better way to make it. Now, what's happening here, we know in modern tea and kind of coffee culture, is that the heat from the sun, no, is not meaningfully brewing it more. It's cold brew tea is what's happening. And that does prevent bitterness from being extracted as much. In tea, there's basically two primary components. There's the bitter components, catechins, tannins, which are actively extracted most as hot as possible, boiling. But then there's also sweet components like L-theanine, which are optimally extracted at more like 85 degrees Celsius. The point is, lower than boiling. This means that if you lower the brew temperature of your tea water, you get less flavor, but of the less flavor you get, the balance is swung in favor of sweeter and more mild flavors, and less like bite and punchy flavor. Now you might be thinking, well, bitterness, that's just bad, right? But a little bit of bitterness that's balanced does give tea its snap, and for a lot of people, they like it and might not register that as bitterness. So it's not just better, it does just give it a different flavor. What I like about this tea is it has that flavor, cold brewed black tea flavor, kind of, but when it is hot brewed, it has a kind of mild, vaguely sun-dried tomato thing going on. Slightly savory, maybe it's just the art on the front, but like a tiny bit of maple syrupy kind of note too. Very satisfying. Mild, but still just like, oh, it hits just right. I'm ready to go kill God now. Let's do this. Godrick, in fact. We go in. We no further planning. We just go in. I'm not even going to activate my flask before we go in. We're just the pure zen.
Mighty dragon, thou the true born heir. Lend me thy strength, O kindred. Deliver me unto greater heights. Well. A lowly tarnished, playing as a lord. I command thee, kneel! I am the lord of all that is golden.
We go. Come forth, my jelly. Let's kick this guy's ass. Okay, first priority is to get Scarlet Rot off. This attack, okay. And I mean, this build is in a pretty good place. Like, we know we have some good early game damage. I've fought this boss plenty of times, so it's not going to be super hard, but we're also, you know, I feel this build is a little squishy, so that adds a little bit of tension at least, which I think is good. That damage over time is spicy. Okay, we got our statuses off, or I don't have ice, actually, cold. Let me take out Dragon Claw. We'll start boofing into him.
Truest of dragons, lend me thy strength.
Ancestors singular and total. Ursine testimonial. He still has the statuses, so we've got this in the bag. Like, we're gonna be fine. Okay, well. Rip my jellyfish, but that's fine. Oh. Okay, so Ray Lucaria today? Yeah. Hee-haw.
I am the Lord of all that is golden. And
Yeah.
one day, we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays of gold.
Yeah, like... Also, Scarlet Rot has been crazy in the early game. I've never experienced that before. That's insane. That's so strong to have access to early. It's interesting because you'd think in some ways that the statuses would be weaker in the early game because they do percent health damage. So they are doing less damage. Thus, if you can manage to get off like Dragon Claws doing up front, you know, it just does the damage it does. I think the damage is pretty generous in the early game, and so I expected that to be strong. It's interesting then that relative to that powerful spell, the status spells are also still good in the early game. That's interesting. The thing about status is that not having every enemy be vulnerable to it is kind of a weird, I don't know about good way to balance that. It puts you in a position where, yeah, against enemies that are not vulnerable to it, you're stuck. You know, it's not every enemy is vulnerable to Scarlet Rot, for example. But at the same time, like, okay, but a lot of them are. And when they are, the enemy takes a ton of damage from it. I don't know, it's weird. It's very on and off. And because incantations are where you get a lot of that, and therefore you have a lot of variety, it puts you in a position where, yeah, not every enemy will die to that, but I just have something else powerful I can use. So we'll see. Again, it's kind of good anyway. We're mostly here for the experience, not for me to show off my sick gaming skills. It's okay if the fights aren't super hard. It's interesting to see the results of running the status incantations. But I'm also not convinced that this is going to stay as easy as it is. That I'm curious about that. So it is worth noting. I feel like that was an unusually easy Godrick fight. Maybe I'm a little over-leveled, but I feel like my health is kind of under-leveled. I will then pretty much immediately put 2 points into Vigor. And I also really want Mind. I think we really need mana for that. So what we're going to do now is go to the tower where you activate Godrick's rune so that we can use it, and then you can consume rune arcs, these things, to get +5 to all stats, which is a pretty big upgrade for this build in particular, kind of as we talked about before. Bring you over here for a sec for some celebratory tea time. You see, it was all in the tea. Just take a little zen time. Just pour water absolutely everywhere, whatever. It's okay. And we won't brew out most of this tea. We won't spend time doing that today. We'll do that tea time tomorrow. I'll do a whole thing of tea. Maybe we'll have this again. But we will have another cup now. Why not? And this will make, with this ratio, that amount of tea, which was probably, I didn't measure, but it was probably about 3 grams, so about 30 cents worth of the tea. That will make about 10 of these, to give you an idea of scale. About 800 milliliters, if I had to guess. This is a 75-ish milliliter. Gaiwan and I often fill it pretty high. So this is steep 2 of, again, probably about 10 that this will produce. If you wanted to not steep 10 times, you'd just use a bigger liquid volume. Less steeps, but you get all the flavor out. Or you could use less tea, or both. But I decided I wanted a small cuppa today. That will probably be done because the tea leaves have opened up now, so that second steep for a tea that's compressed like this often doesn't take as long. Or, well, it takes longer because you took out some flavor, but then it takes less long again because the leaves are more open. So And yes, I am enough of a nerd that I measured it so that this is exactly the same liquid volume as this. So if you want to, you can just pour the whole thing and you know that will fit in here. I don't always want that, but in this situation, I did. I'm just this kind of person, and so I know the measurements of all of these things. I just think it's convenient. My tea dragon, he says. Love for Elden Ring, they got actors that ham it up. Past Souls voice acting was more subtle, mellow even. This has some kick to it. I like the voice actors in this. Yep, I agree. I like Godrick as a starting point. I think it's a badass opening. I think that for people who've played a lot of these games, I personally thought Godrick was a little easy compared to how much personally I had a lot of trouble with Stormveil, having not played a lot of this kind of game and having gone there pretty early when I played through the game the first time. I had a lot of trouble with getting through Stormveil, and then Godrick was a little disappointingly easy compared to how much trouble I'd had with that stuff. But that was just me, and I think it's a suitably epic fight. I think a lot of people would have skipped more Stormveil stuff and then not have as much trouble. I think for people that haven't played a lot of this kind of game, this was a very broadly popular game. I think that was a good opening fight. I think Morgott on the bridge leading up to Stormveil is a good opening fight. I feel like the beginning of the game is pretty strong, and you'll hear a lot of other people's complaints. It is interesting. Orbit around later in the game. I think that's interesting. Could be worth some analysis. Well done for what it was. Cheers. Certainly not going to hold back on getting to Raya Lucaria. In fact, probably won't do all of that today, but we could probably get surprisingly far. After I activate Godrick's Great Rune, let's charge Raya Lucaria. Because I don't want to be over-leveled for this stuff. And we got a lot of early game value, so that's tapering off, but like we're definitely at a good power level for Raya Lucaria right now. And then we can respec. Yeah. Really good second steep. You get a lot more texture now the leaves are all the way open. I would really love to know scientifically why some teas have like more texture. You know, the liquid itself feels slightly more viscous or thick. What's going on there? Like how does that work? I guess tea, and I mean it's plant leaves. Like they have thickeners of a sort in them. Yeah, I suppose. But that's weird, isn't it? I don't know. Very good. Oh, the texture's so satisfying. This would be really good in the winter. But the temperature of my apartment has been all over the place lately, so at the moment it's kind of cold in here. Oh, very satisfying. Yeah, just a slight... I almost am hallucinating a little bit of lemon. I guess because of that association with that southern sun-brewed iced tea thing that I described before. Very, very satisfying. Oh, it's so good. You know, it's a chill tea, not a super punchy, loud flavor, but I really like it. I think for some people their complaint would be it's too mild. But I personally like it for what it is. And there's subtleties there. Subtleties, ha? Boo. Good job. Godrick down. Activate Godrick's rune. Will be on the docket next. And then, yeah, we'll see what time we've got for doing more stuff after that. Sweet, so I'm going to navigate toward that. Ragnavar, you said, I do worry that per stream channel runs the risk of getting harder and harder to follow as each week different topics come up on stream, which could kill previous ones prematurely, but it might work well contrary to my expectations. That's part of the reason I don't think it makes that much sense. I feel like it's better to just have things like Archive Parlay, or maybe a new system. Ow. Thank you for killing that enemy. dueled boy. I'm gonna heal back after that though. In Friday streams also, we tend to have enough time on the Friday streams to just talk about a topic all the way through. So I also feel like that just would do less, like that is less needed. Kind of hard to do this in the dark. I sort of wish I'd switched it to like midday before running like this, but what can you do? Just yoink. Money. I'm just gonna run past a lot of these because you get ambushed. And then there's like a mini boss. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay. And then there's a boss to fight coming up, where I actually probably do want to clear out a lot of these enemies. Oh, look at the AoE on that. Oh, that's gross. Ooh, it's so fat. Look at that chonky AoE. Hey, new armor. Now that Godrick is dead, we can stop representing him. Love it. You love to see it. Let me, okay. Please don't come to work today. Get some mana and mow these guys down with a breath attack. Okay, that's getting really, really problematic. But it's okay, we're getting a spellcasting speed item in Rhea Lucaria as well. That's another reason I really want to get there. Because you can see in this situation, most of my kit is not usable. Like, we can't actually get the spells off in time. I also run the risk of being a little bit too squishy for some of these engagements. There's a decent chance I just die here. Yep. So casting speed and some tankiness is extremely important, or against normal enemies. We're not quite online yet. Sorry, asymptomatic, you said Friday tends to be more in-depth on one topic or another, while the other days were usually centralized on a specific game. Although I do not expect too much movement on Elden Ring beyond the stream, there's technically an infinite, intuitive place to move discussions if folks were so inclined. That's a good point. Yep, that if people wanted more discussion for these streams, we will have channels on the Discord. We do have channels on the Discord for each of these games. So it doesn't need to be on a specific channel either. Which is also part of the reason I feel like that, it's good to have less channels. This is what I was saying before, where I don't want to sound hostile to people suggesting things. I want you to suggest them. You will find that I will reject most suggestions for stuff to add to the Discord, and I am arguing that that is good, that that's kind of my job, to want the Discord to be focused so it's not overwhelming, so that it's easier to use, so that it's more usable. And yeah, I think those are good points, asymptomatic. We do kind of already have spaces for that stuff. Do I have any other head armor? Yeah, I think we're rolling with this for a little while. With my guy's face, it just looks especially ridiculous. But I sort of like it. How do these look? Like that better or worse? I feel like if it's less damage reduction, I need to not swap to that. Like, we should use the remaining slots to get as much damage reduction as possible. Yep. I like how this looks on a player character. I've never worn, like, the whole set, as it were, before. I don't know why that's tickling my funny bone so much. I just think the blatant, like, gigantic towel from the perspective of a character model not designed for this looks funny in a good way. I quite like these enemies, but I think it looks instead humorous on a player character. Ow. Not doing this again. Get him out of there. Pretty sure we get a Site of Grace right past here. There's a mini boss, though. Oh, my runes. This is like 6,000 runes too, so let's get that. We go. It's like a kid wearing their parents' clothes, right? Exactly. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Just no, I don't think that's a good bet. We're gonna want to go for this. Oh yeah. Pretty sure he can just break that? No? Okay. One more opening and we're good. Man, Dragon Claw is carrying hard. That's crazy. People know this is a good ability, but like, damn. The Dragon Communion Seal is also quite ideal. Of course, you get the damage boost. And I think the Dragon Communion Seal's damage boost is especially large as well, if I remember correctly. The seals that are themed after a certain type of incantation all boost that incantation type's effectiveness, and the Dragon Communion Seal boosts Dragon Communion incantations, obviously. But I believe it also boosts them by like an exceptional amount. And so that is part of what's happening here. It requires Arcane and Faith, and we have for this level high Arcane and Faith. So like you would expect, and it's not doing ludicrous damage, but it's definitely really impressive. That is still really good. Pretty close to a level up. Om nom nom. Sorry for punching the mic. I do it out of anger. I do it out of affection. The Tarnished, to compensate for there being no neck, summoned a dragon head so that people would take them seriously. Interesting. That's an interesting tactic. Right, with the dragon heads, it looks like the Tarnished is the neck for the dragon. That's amazing. Okay. We need to build a whole fashion around it. Can I see something? Okay, so if you, like this. Okay, but some armor won't cut that off. Maybe that's wrong. Or we gotta explore if there's ways to not cut off that part of the armor, because that could be pretty good. Do we have the full exile set? I bet we do. Oh, not the gloves. Okay. Cool. Okay, we continue to charge. We just have to get across this, and then we can activate the seal. And there's going to be a bunch of big enemies, which this build is very good at fighting, as you've seen. Usually bosses and the like, or just large targets, are a good matchup for this build. So this is what is normally, when I personally played through the game the first time, this was harder than Godrick for my build, but this is going to be even easier for this build, I think. He does the pull? Okay. Yep. So close. Perhaps ice? I don't know. Nice crunchy sound effect of hitting the enemy's heels. You might not have to kill these guys, actually. Okay. Actually. In which case, we should probably, like, not. They do give runes, but... Yeehaw. Okay, that's bad. No, let's not. Please, no? Okay, they friendly fired each other. You love to see it. Let's try that again. And boom goes the dynamite every single time. Look at that. Hey, there we go. Okay. I deserve that one, really. Tips hat, Tarnished. Just got this guy. Who was I kidding? We're not killing these guys. The dumbest guy I know. Are you? Thank you. Okay. Alright, we'll give that guy a medal. No torrent. Okay, that's fine. We will simply use the ancient art of line of sight. Perfectly fine. Okay. Again, arguably deserved that one, but what are you gonna do? War crime level damage, my word. Okay. Big arrows. Right over, you say, my thoughts on a separate channel for recommendations outside of games specifically was mostly as a way to have a series of linked recommendations to make finding them easier without having discussion clutter. If I, for example, wanted to recommend a couple of cool videos on topics related to the stream, I could just link them in that channel, and the embedded player would then be available to watch them, or the links go to YouTube itself, and finding a video I mentioned would be more simple. No worries if that's not what you're after, though. I mean, I want the stream to be able to be about things you all enjoy. I will just say that I think that it's a hard thing finding a way to balance. This elevator ride takes like 5 minutes, so we might as well have a whole heckin' discussion here. It's hard to decide how to balance this type of stream. You know, I would argue that for some of the stream archives on the Bootleg Builds YouTube channel have like 500-ish views. I would reckon that a solid 400 plus of those views consider the stream to be unarguably too complex, or like there are too many topics. It needs to be more focused for those people, or they like it, but it would be a better experience if it were less unfocused. And the problem is that the remaining 100 people are mostly the people that pay me for a living, including you all, and then like are also the people on the stream. You see what I mean? So to an extent, this was the intention behind the Friday streams, is that I can kind of suss that stuff out with you all and have a time where we're just hanging out without it needing to be part of these streams. Now, one of the reasons I thought that doing something like these Elden Ring playthroughs would be good is that it's a time where, you know, there's a good amount of downtime. We're walking around. I've played through this part of the game before, so I know where I'm going, and we have some travel time where there can be some ambiance and we can hang out and chat. I think a lot of the people who want these streams probably do want those topics as well, for what it's worth. You know, they don't want no tangents. The first stream, day one of the Dragon Communion arc, was very tangenty. You know, we talked about a lot of other stuff. We're at the beginning of the game. There's not a lot of build stuff to talk about immediately, which I think is probably good. For one thing, that's what these streams provide. You know, you can expect that there will be like a lot of that type of thing. And that's the appeal of these streams. We talk about stuff. It's not just the game being on in the background. It's okay if you want that, but that's available already. There's no need for more of that. And in these streams, you can get, you know, like some other stuff, not to put too fine a point on it. And so it's good for that to be that way, but also that it's less dense at the beginning. You know, we're not into the game as far, and so there's not as much build and mechanic stuff to discuss. Therefore, it's a good time for those topics. That was sort of the intent behind these streams in the first place. So I do want to see if this stuff will all be handled well by that. Rather than me not wanting the streams to be this way. You know, if you want the stream to be full of like related topics, I think that's cool, and I want there to be a place for that. But there's also a question of making it already is the most about that stuff, and making it not work as a standalone thing as well. I don't know. I have no idea what people want, and to an extent, it's like a thing I learned in this part of my life and career is that most people who do this for a living don't know or care deep down what other people want, and have not thought about that much. They did what they were going to do and then made minor concessions to make it like workable based on what went well and what went poorly when they did whatever they would just naturally want to do. They did not plan out from the start what somebody would like and like then adjust it to what they themselves wanted to make. But that's what I did. I started with what would actually be good, And then of those things, which ones do I want to do? Which I think is better in the long run. I think you will find that that will be a successful and valuable approach to have taken. I'll leap over that guy's head. But it has meant that I need to do a lot of like tweaking and like micro adjustments, micro corrections, if you will, to figure out how to get the thing I'm doing to actually be watchable. And I don't know. I mean, like, who knows, right? What do people want out of these streams? Again, if you have, if you know, if you feel like you know that, tell me, of course. But just to say, it's complicated. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm not going to pretend to be a total expert at that. Although compared to other people, I am at least focusing my time on trying to figure that out, which is, I think, something other people are not doing, for better or worse. I mean, for better, right? Other people have made more videos because they're not hung up on like, what do people want out of a stream? However, that has its drawbacks. Like, they're then capped on, okay, well, but they can only do like whatever would come out naturally, and they just have to settle for all of the drawbacks of whatever that thing is. For example, a lot of YouTubers have a topic that goes really, really well for them for the first few years, but the topic is quite like expendable or limited. It's not a very good long-term topic. They're going to run out of stuff. Or a really common problem that I think is actually really interesting, but it's sort of a shame because it's a problem for a lot of people, is that people have a topic that removes their own audience. Like they have a topic that is only useful if you have not watched their videos before. But then once you have watched their videos, they themselves are not very useful to you anymore. And so viewers have a kind of maximum lifespan on like these types of channels. One of the goals of my channels is to do the reverse, is to basically create my own audience. I think the biggest problem with my topics is that we're going in depth on the mechanics of a lot of games, something that a lot of people are not already at a place where they're interested in discussing that, or the closest point would be like game design in general. Talking about what makes a build system good is a few steps away from, I think, what a lot of people are currently chewing on in games, but is something that I believe people would want if it were offered. And so the goal is to create an environment where you could realize you might enjoy that and then provide that thing to other people. So we'll see if that actually works in the long run. It's been going okay so far, but we'll see. Content with a learning curve. Interesting. Certainly one of the big moves that eventually we'll see if works of my career is also having multiple channels that are kind of tiered. Having the Zandypants channel to find new people, most broad topic, bootleg builds for more in-depth discussions in specific games. I think it's quite hard to talk about game design in this level of detail without like going in and doing it hands-on, which we've done a lot in these streams already. That part's going really well, in my opinion. If you wanted to critique just every damn aspect of Elden Ring's design, yeah, I mean, yep, you've come to the right place. Yeah, and then having the Pantaloon Saloon channel for like super in-depth discussion about pretty much anything people want that discussion about, I think is a really useful structure and is intended to let people kind of trickle down to where they want to go once they feel comfortable with those things. Will there be a rank up ceremony between the channels? Ooh, that sounds fun. You could get some kind of challenge or a video intended to be between those. Maybe there could be a way to do that. Certainly, Feather, I have thought a lot about, once the Zandypants channel has consistent videos, figuring out a way to make, to create like a satisfying pathway so you know that bootleg builds and Pantaloon Saloon exist without making it obnoxious. I find that most people, when they recommend their other work, they make a YouTube video and they mention that they have a stream, for example, they mention it in a token way. They mention it in a way that is just, I want you to be a number on my thing, so go watch it. And it's like, smart people wouldn't want to do this. That's annoying. But there are times where I've made a thing that is legitimately intended. I put thought and effort into it being good for specifically you, a person who is at this part of the video. And I think it's very important and valuable to spend your time recommending it at those times, you know, trying to find a way to recommend things like that is very important to me anyway. that is the type of thing I would like when other channels do it. And then we charge the gates. So I like the idea of, I don't know what it would be, but having some videos that are interconnected in a meaningful way is definitely something I'm interested in. Rank up ceremony videos. Certainly, some of the videos are already connected in a meaningful way. For example, if I make a video that is a video essay about the beginnings of games on the Zany Pants channel, there have been parlay about that. There might be an early game related build on bootleg builds. I might mention that we have an Elden Ring playthrough where I start from the very beginning of the game. These are practical examples if somebody wanted to dig into that, sure. It is not good to just recommend, like, hey, also unrelatedly, we're streaming something not relevant to this topic today. Please stop watching this video and instead go do that. Like, people do that frequently on YouTube, but no, stop. Like, I don't know. I know why they do that, but it's annoying. It's not good if you want an audience that likes you and wants to pay you to keep doing the thing you're doing, which is what I want. I want you to be happy with the thing I'm making to entertain you, not to give me a click on a thing. Why does Raya Lucaria have so many damn monsters and like cages? You know, it's like Hogwarts, but only owls. Just please stop. Do not. Bad. No. Gross. Hogwarts, but only owls is just the absolute worst. So yeah, if that makes a bit more sense. I don't know exactly. I think the important thing right now is that I want to hold on to your recommendations for stuff to add to the streams and not overcrowd them into my life right this second. I think I desperately need to just get things under control with having videos up consistently. I'm happy that the stream started pretty much on time. That's good start. But we got a ways to go. Pretty confident that by the end of this year we'll all be laughing about this, but look at that super armor. Legendary. But I will probably hold on a lot of additions to the channel and streams because I think we've been in a feedback loop like that for a while. I need to make sure everything that's here works first. And that has well and truly not been the case for a long time. Okay, yeah. I was gonna fight everybody here, but I guess, okay. Yeah. As you can see. Hogwarts, but it's called that due to all of the hogs. Hootwarts? That's fun. It's funny, we had that topic a few weeks ago about how J.K. Rowling being problematic means maybe it would be nice to not read or purchase the Harry Potter books. And we made the point that someone could theoretically like want to read through the Harry Potter books to like learn about writing or something. And then maybe that's a case where we're more happy to get the benefits of what people liked about the Harry Potter books, but put them in something that is not written by an author that is purposefully using their platform to be mean to other people. But the thing is that the Harry Potter books are the definition of a series where I feel like there could not possibly be anything that you would need specifically the Harry Potter series to learn as a writer. This isn't even necessarily meant to be a burn. I just feel like the Harry Potter series is a really good example of how doing the basics well, or even just at all, is like surprisingly a lot of the way toward making a book that people will enjoy. A very large majority of the like storytelling in our culture has not done the like basic boxes that you can check on storytelling stuff, and just having like an outline and stuff isn't that much of a deus ex machina. There was some plan for things, you know, before the series started. I personally think is mostly enough. You largely don't need more than that, if you just want to, like, I don't know, be a commercially successful writer, I think you're good as long as you plan at all. The bar is not high, or people really like stories. The bar doesn't need to be that high. And that is why many of these works are successful, because planning out a gigantic long story is hard, and a lot of people just don't do it. Many of the works that people consider like really good or cultural icons didn't do anything that amazing. They just did some basic structural stuff that like isn't that bad. I would say to anyone who wanted to learn from reading Harry Potter, hypothetically, for example, consider how far you could get with just the basics. Even if you don't think that's why Harry Potter is successful, consider what if it was, you know? And I think upon analysis, I wonder if many more people would agree with me. And right, the rest of it, you can pretty much just figure that stuff out on the wiki. I don't agree that everything you can gain from someone's book can be gained from the wiki at all. I think a lot of it is like specifically the structure of those things in the book, and you cannot get it from the wiki. But a lot of the nuts and bolts stuff, like world building details, you absolutely can. And then if we're saying that all most writers did is they have their world building and it's weird in particular, plus they did the basics, yeah, you definitely don't need to read the book to get those benefits. You could just consider that it is those things and then move on. Yeah. Ow. We can easily just skip like a huge amount of this. So we're gonna do that because I'm over leveled and I hate those dogs so much. I hate them so much. Oh, the timing was so close. I could have just jumped on that and been out of here. Get me out of here. I don't think you can make it from that side. It looked like a good job. I did it with authority, you gotta admit. It looked like a good job. Fennec, welcome back. Good timing. Let's we get a solid 45 minutes. I think we can get the Radigan icon, which is the spellcasting speed thing. We could probably get that today. We're pretty close to that. That would be a good place to stop. And then we probably won't kill Renala today. But tomorrow, or the next stream, this time next week, we'll easily get to Renala, and then we can respec, which for this build will kind of let me refund about 10-ish levels worth of stats. Are you actually kidding? Get out of the way. Okay. Sometimes the dog gets on. Yoink. Right, Avar, you were finishing up the like getting the benefit on the wiki thing. You said her writing, J.K. Rowling's writing, leaves a lot to be desired, and the main strength of the Harry Potter series people commonly cite is the world building, aka the thing fans go insane writing up every detail of for free on the internet. Sure, I'm just making the argument that the fact that that is the main strength people cite does not mean it is the main strength. I personally don't agree that it is, and I also think that the quality of the prose, the world building, and then there is another meaningful category, which is the form, I would say. How is the story paced and written out? What is the structure of each paragraph? Or if there's a combat scene, how do they break it up? There's a lot of approaches to that in writing. What's the perspective of the narrative? Things like that. These are not things that I would say are necessarily always better or worse, but it is noteworthy to focus on them. And I think it's the thing that readers care about the most, but know about the least. And for most books where it's like, this seems kind of basic if you analyze it, I think that the answer is people liked the form, but didn't realize that it was the form. I have also found, I have a theory that a lot of the time when a book is appealing to people because of its form, people often, when they misidentify it, but they like the book, they usually credit the world building. And then if you look closely and you ask them questions about it, sometimes it will come out that, wait, I think they really mean the form of the book, like the structure of the book. I think that is interesting. But I'm not necessarily saying that's true of Harry Potter. Just in general, I want to talk about that as little as possible. But just to say, I personally think when trying to extract the benefit from like a thing being popular, there's two key tricks. The first one is obvious. A thing being popular doesn't make it good. But then a more interesting one, people definitely don't just magically know what they like about something that's popular. They could easily just be wrong. Sure, it's also like an early one in the isekai trend, like just getting sent to another world or getting whisked away. That's a good point, Fennec. Yep. Asymptomatic, you said. I'm skimming the Wikipedia article for Sekai no Owari to Hado Borido Wandarando. Why does that sound familiar? Wandarando must be Wonderland in Japanese. Sekai no Owari, The End of the World. Wonderland. Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World by Haruki Murakami. I thought it was a TV anime because the context of this stream. No, you definitely will not get the appeal without reading it. Right, that's a great example. Nice. That actually is a really good example. I should read that. We could do that for book club. You want to do a stream or like a Discord book club and do Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World? You want to redo all of my my capstone in college, but as a book club on the Discord? Does that sound fun? Do I win at content if we do that? Magnus, that you said, I feel a distinct curiosity about Harry Potter in the sense that I was not able to read it growing up. The hype I've heard encourages me that there's something substantial I would find in reading it, but that might just be cultural popularity. Yeah, I really strongly believe that there is not. I'm not just saying that because I want to not recommend this series of books. 2 streams ago, I said that I personally think if you really thought there was value there, the greater good is for you to get that value. Just pirate the ebooks or something, or watch the movies. Pirate the movies. But I strongly believe there is not. I think that the thing is also partly the form, though. I think that having it be 7 years of school and each book is 1 year of the schooling is really good. Like, I feel like that's an undersung, underestimated benefit of, like, that's a cool form. Like, there's something there. That kind of thing matters a lot, I think, anyway. Yeah, I also think that the comment that the movies give you a lot of the value is a good comment. And I have a lot of recommendations if you would be interested, Magnus Nate. If you're looking for some reads, boy, do I have some recommendations. Juke, juke. Okay, failed juke. Fart breath. That combo. Yep. In general, this like style of enemy, I've found you often want to flank. You don't want to dodge like back. I mean, you kind of just don't want to dodge back in general in this game, but oh, so close. First try. Where? What? Whoa. My wolf guy, what? Did you see the jump attack? Where I hate that desk. I hated the student that was there. Die! Like, that one was for intimidation, right? That was an aura points only. That was an aura farming move. That's right. What the hell? Seriously. All right, I'm getting more mana. I'm sick of this. Fennec, you were elaborating. There was clearly a huge market desire for a young kid with a crappy life gets whisked away to another world and has an important and much better life, fantasy escapism. Harry Potter tapped into that, the world was serviceable, the writing was bland and approachable, which allowed it to be easily read by kids and adults with a super low reading level alike. I tried to read it, but the reading was so incredibly childish and dry that I never got into it at all. And to be more positive for a moment, it can be surprisingly enjoyable to enjoy these, like, not very adorned or there's not a lot going on type of narratives. Stories are just fun, like, and that's fine, but it definitely doesn't mean that there's anything uniquely good about it. I think that's the other side. I would not be, I don't care that you are, but I personally am not very harsh on that type of narrative. But also in another way, you could say it's actually even worse. Like, stories are not like so unique and precious most of the time. Usually it takes a lot for it to be told in a way where you just like desperately need this version of the story, I think anyway. I think that is a fascinating detail of popular things too. It's like usually it's just that the culture really wants this thing right now, but I feel like much of the time it's literally the worst one of the thing that people are saying they want that gets popular. I'm not necessarily the case here, but or like often our culture seems like quality is neither here nor there to an almost inconceivable degree, like more than it seems like it wouldn't matter. That is weird. Or two things will be popular at the same time in a culture. One thing which is bad, and then another thing which has questionable value unless you care that it is well constructed, indicating that the culture is in a superposition of does and does not care about quality. You know what I mean? Sometimes you see two things that seem popular with the same people, and you think through what might be the appeals of those things. And we don't know all appeals the thing could have, sure, but it seems hauntingly like it doesn't seem entirely possible for those two things to be the popular things at the same time. Like it feels contradictory for those, like that to be the thing that is winning it for people. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but I always find that very fascinating, like what succeeds in a medium versus what fails. And obviously I think a good caveat there is if you ever feel like that's way too true, it's always good to check if it's just because of where you're seeing the ratings or the declaration that the thing is popular. For example, if you go to my anime list, you'll find that the top 50 anime can be a little confusing to read through. Like some of them, it feels like, isn't the only point of this that it's a more sober or mature take on this, which is at the position number 5? Like how are both of those things so popular at the same time? People perceive no difference between them. Well, one, they might not perceive any difference between them, and also it's like, okay, but maybe the people on this website are the not the whole, you know, span of the people reading this medium or consuming this medium. My anime list is not most or all anime fans. Like you can't ever have most or all anime fans in a forum. The humanity is too globalized in a way, or not globalized enough for that. I just think that's very interesting, you know, to see. Or like if you look up book sales, some sources you'll find will say that A Court of Thorns and Roses, Sarah J. Maas books, and like the Stormlight Archive, Brandon Sanderson stuff, Cosmere stuff, are the two most popular series by far. And it might initially be very puzzling to think that those are the two popular things at the same time. But it's like, okay, but probably also not with the same people. And also over here, it's like, well, but from what source? You know, popular with who? No census taker was magically able to just summon a perfectly representative sample of all humanity, of course, right? And so I don't know what sample that is, but you know, if it's on like Goodreads or whatever, that is absolutely not like an objective sample of all of reality. Though I would very, very much like to know if you could somehow know what actually are the most popular things overall. That would be an interesting way to look at our culture, especially comparing that to them being popular doesn't mean much, but comparing that to what does our society think or say is the most popular and what actually is the most popular. Like that, I think that gap would be very interesting. Otherwise, there's no fun to be had with popularity. It doesn't mean anything else, really. But I just think that's fascinating. Magnus Nate, earlier you said we're winding down with the stream. Good job. You said book recommendations. I certainly wouldn't be opposed. I can mention a few, sure, with a few caveats. We got Radigan Icon. I think that this is a high priority right now. I'm going to equip it over stamina regen that I do also want. I use a ton of stamina because I just think it's that desperate for this build. So what this does is give you a virtual 30 dexterity that contributes only toward casting speed. So in Elden Ring, dexterity gives you a spell casting animation speed increase up to a cap. The cap is 70. Radigan Icon gives you the casting speed benefit of 30 dexterity contributing to the cap. So with 18 dexterity now, I cast as if I have 48 dexterity. And if I get 22 more, then I will gain no more cast speed from anymore. I think that cast speed is like both underrated and overrated. Many times in Elden Ring, you will try to cast something or do an attack, and you will be just barely too late. You just, by like a sliver of a second, you'll be too late. So casting speed is very good. On the other hand, casting speed gives you practically no casting speed in Elden Ring. The difference is tiny. Let me just show you. Okay. There's that, and I'm going to equip this and see if you can tell the difference. Not by much. Let's try one more. A breath attack. Okay, that's without Radigan Icon. And now here it is with it. You know, like it works. It's not like broken. You can measure by frames, and a really easy way to notice this working is if you make videos about these things for a living. It becomes easy to see that there is definitely a benefit. But it's not a huge benefit. There are a couple of caveats to like why it seems like there's so little benefit. But again, I feel the point stands that a few frames, even if the boost in speed is very, very small, just does matter a lot of the time in Elden Ring. You often miss. Yeah, right. I can see it, but it's very like the extra iframe makes it possible to dodge X attack as opposed to, whoa, it's like twice as quick. Right, exactly. That's exactly true. It's not like, whoa, you got a spellcasting increase. It's more like insurance for committing to casting a spell. Like you get a middling insurance policy on your spellcasting. You know, if you decide to pay the mana for Rotten Breath, 5% of the time we'll pay that insurance policy and you'll inflict rot on the enemy. That it's not like casting speed is not really what it feels like. Now, the other layer, Bionic Me, you mentioned, casting speed only affects the wind-up channeling of the spell, not the execution of the full animation, so the effect can vary a lot between different spells. Yep, it's also true that depending on the amount of a spell that is affected by the casting speed, and how long the spell is to cast, obviously, the effect can vary by quite a bit. Long spellcasting times that are all affected by the spellcasting speed do get pretty noticeable, actually. That can be quite easy to notice. I'm not aware that we have that many that are where it is all that big of a deal. But certainly, for getting out some small stuff, there's some combos, right, that like work at certain casting speeds, but don't at others. I still think it is critical to have. Most of the time this build is going to lose a fight, it's going to be because you couldn't get that off in time. So I still think it's very good, and I just want to rehash again that my pitch to you about why it might be kind of good is not because it has a large effect. It's just that even a small amount of boost, which it does give you, is quite good in context, I think. A lot of the time you'll fail by only a few frames, so only a few frames is good. But it doesn't really make you faster at spellcasting by like that meaningful of an amount. It's more like you just get off spells you wouldn't have. Feather, you said a lot of the status quo championing at first seems par for the course, but then it gets a lot stronger if you look into her other books, or her as a person, or how Harry became a cop in a wizarding society where cops are expected to catch elf slaves in the end. Right, people are going back to the Harry Potter races. Yeah, it's a problematic author and problematic books. I will not get into that more here, just to say, yeah, I think that's bad. The conclusion is also like, like why the focus on that? Asymptomatic, you were going more on popular things. My anime list lets me weed out the 3s and 4s of the world so I can focus on the works that actually overlap with my tastes. Generally, I can stomach a 6, and the anime I would volunteer for scrutiny tend to hover around 7. Same way I rate things out of 10. 7 is like, it doesn't mean it's good at 7. 5 is like, it's fine. 6, maybe it's good. But 7 is, I think it is worth your time. A person with standards might consider this worth their time. That doesn't mean you have to have infinitely high standards, just that there are infinitely many works that are a 7 or higher. Like, you'll never consume them all. So it's okay to drop things that are good, but just not that good. There are infinitely many more pieces of entertainment that are, an 8 or whatever, right? And ironically, that's a nice way to curtail the Harry Potter discussion as well. It's not that I think the book, taken purely outside of its context, which matters to me, but even if you did that, it's not that I think that it's such a, like, not good book. It's just there are tons of really amazing books. Like, there's no need, is really more my point. You could argue it either way. That's how I do. Magnus Nate, can you tell me where you are as a reader, or what kind of thing you want as a reader, as a bit of guidance, like what you've read recently, or what you've enjoyed in the past, knowing that you would be interested in, like, Harry Potter, you said, is not a terrible starting point. Sure. Stuff like that, or like other kinds of entertainment that you currently enjoy. I don't want to make you just spit out all of your personal details, and it's obvious I don't mean to be too impersonal, Magnus, that you've watched the stream for years. It's not like I know nothing about you from the streams. I've just, for the sake of completeness, I feel like giving the recommendation its context is good. I guess I'll add a quick book recommendations section into the stream as well. Other book recommendations, anyway. Please allow me to save you from the over-trivialized book recommendations that you can get on the internet nowadays. I'm just going to adjust the list as well, because we got some stuff. Radigan icon acquired. Nice. We also got another spell slot. Again, it's sort of comedy at this point because we don't have there kind of are other status spells at this part of the game, but it's gonna be a minute before we have stuff for these slots. After next week, probably up on the docket is to get some like good generalist faith spellcasting. Like a general AoE would be nice, and the Flame of Frenzy comes to mind. Frenzied Burst, which is a really good like sniping tool, would be good to have. We should probably pick up Poison Armament. That's not like that hard to get. There's a few like obvious ones that I would be using all the time if we had them, so we should probably go get them. I think it's also probably time to move on from using this katana, and there is an arcane scaling axe that you can get access to at this part of the game that I could then enchant with like poison or blood loss, and then you'd be able to scale that enchantment because the axe scales with arcane. Again, another like weird way to plug in arcane scaling, status scaling, but that's pretty important. We're going to be doing lots of janky ways to get the ability to scale up status for the most of the early to mid game. Right of our good point. That's also something I'll bring up now. The occult whetstone is, I believe, quite late in the game. That is very relevant to this build because it unlocks a lot of very advantageous combinations. But I believe it is not. It's like we can't get it super soon. I think you kill Radahn and then go into Noxtella. We might want to, step on it with doing that, sure, but it's not available particularly early on. Now, I would imagine this build might dumpster Radahn. Maybe that's going to be really easy. We probably just need a lot of health, I would say, is the likely thing. And we could find an occult weapon art that we could use just for the scaling. That's a good... I'll put that in the notes, actually. I'll look... there are some of those, none of which are coming to mind. But that would be relevant, too. Just to say there are good ways around this as well, like using the ripple axe and then just putting grease on it, and then that will, like, jury rig, plug in the arcane scaling to work with the weapon. Magnus, you take your time if you do have further datum about book recommendations, but I'll just throw out a few that I think are interesting. I think that one of the things that is valuable in a book recommendation for people that are asking and thus are generally a little newer to, like, they haven't read a ton of stuff and therefore have a lot of context for what they want. I think something that can be helpful are books that validate the concern a lot of people have that the book, like, isn't going anywhere or what the book is trying to do. And I think a lot of writers are better at that than others, and that is a kind of weird skill, but does matter, in my opinion. Having it be that the style of the way that the story is written is just so interesting or creates a certain mood decisively, or there's a number of books. I have a growing list of books that are like the book itself, like, teaches you how to read the book, tutorializes like a video game, but in a subtle way that's built into the narrative. How you could enjoy the book is, I think, a really good type of recommendation for someone that wants to enjoy reading, but also has some standards and is rightly skeptical that it will be like just whatever. It will just be a things are happening kind of story, as Fennec, you put it before. I liked how The Starless Sea by Aaron Morgenstern did that. I'll type that up in chat. And I also think that having a strong start, like, there's a reason that Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn has been popular. I think it's because that matter-of-fact, to-the-point writing style is very refreshing and something a lot of people wanted but didn't know was on offer. And not all of his books do that. But it might be that the promise that he is going somewhere with this from Mistborn will then validate your enjoyment of some of the other books, and you can just go along for the ride and enjoy yourself. Just as a simple example, if you read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson and you have not read Mistborn or maybe one of his other books that does that, therefore you do not know that he is sort of going somewhere with all these details, it may be harder to enjoy the ride because you might not know if any of this is building to something. That doesn't mean you think it's going to get good later. It just means that when things happen in the narrative, you don't think that he's just being arbitrary and fixating on something that doesn't have to do with the narrative. You can feel like, I'm along for an adventure, everything is building up upon itself, and we're going to keep snowballing like that forever, and I can just enjoy, like, what's in front of me. I personally think that that book, The Way of Kings, does not do that by itself, but if you have the context that he as a writer does do that, it might make you enjoy that a lot more. The people that are into, like, sequencing of the Brandon Sanderson books will be quick to point out that they don't really recommend reading The Way of Kings early in the progression of those interconnected books anyway. So as a happy coincidence. It's not really a coincidence. You probably, it wouldn't make sense to read that from the start in the first place, but it's a popular book, so of course a lot of people do. I just think it's a lot worse if you don't read other books first, or go into it with a perspective acquired by reading other books of his. You don't need to check the Chekhov's guns. You can let it hang on the wall, trusting it will be shot. Sure, good way to put it. Yeah. But yeah, then The Star of the Sea, I think is a fun, like, book that tutorializes enjoying a book. Characters in the book try to interpret the book during the book. Like, that, I think, would appeal to a lot of people, or be a thing like, I didn't know that was offered, but I want it now that I know it is. That kind of thing. And we could do more. I'm happy to talk or hear book recommendations sooner. I could easily have a lot more if you want it. Thank you for the stream, Asymptomatic. Work is sucking at my creative juices, and the weekend was busily loud for the holiday, quote unquote. Of course, yeah, I could not. There's little I dislike more than American holidays. It's the least restful time, because everybody uses it to abuse the social contract and make a ton of noise and be disruptive. But I had a restful for what it was holiday, and getting back into the string of things. So I get where you're coming from, Asymptomatic. I'm feeling revved up, but definitely exhausted. And yeah, I'll look at Ragnavar, you're right. There is that thing in Fort Height that gives you a castle height that gives you a blood affinity. I'll look for occult scaling Ashes of War. And yeah, we could also just rush killing Radahn and then go get the occult whetstone, because that's quite relevant to this build. We'll get into that more next time. So the topic for next time basically is weapons scaling status, usually in totally contrived ways. Just equally as contrived to how you have to scale status with seals, with sacred seals. Man, scaling status output in this game is just a whole thing, isn't it? Jeez. But that's what we're doing here. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see how fast you can inflict some status effects when you can actually build into that. There's 9 times out of 10 when a build is set up, even if it appears to be able to scale status effects, a good amount of the time it just can't. So I'm very excited to see that, like, fully up to speed. Thanks to stream, folks. I hope that was fun. I enjoyed this little string of it. We really got to see the build in its full power. You can see that being that we have planned out a build and Elden Ring gives you a lot of flexibility early, we are too powerful now for the early game. So a good way to balance that out and make it more fun is to rush a little bit. And then once we hit up against the wall, well, there's lots of other ways to attain power. I need more power. The English in that one show, The Eminence in Shadow. Yes, I very high level English. Thank you, Fennec. I see we have a fellow I am atomic enjoyer. Just an incredible, like, excellent parody of the genre. I know, right, Fennec, I'm in the same place. I described that to my partner and she went, it sounds like you would hate that. And I said, okay, but like, I mean, I kind of did. I just had a lot of fun though. I don't know. I sort of did hate it. I don't know. It was bad. I think it was pretty bad mostly. But at the right moment with a certain perspective, I still really enjoyed it. And I think it committed, it was like enough. It was like enough of a parody that it worked, but what would have improved that series is if it was actually a parody instead of just taking itself too seriously. It's very interesting. If you want to watch a show that is like, is this satire or are we just being serious? Even the show does not know, even the author does not know these answers. Watch The Eminence in Shadow. The plausible deniability made it perfect. It's like a well-balanced flavor. Right. Laughing with versus laughing at. But the thing is that it's constantly oscillating between doing both. I really like plausible deniability of a narrative as a comment. That's funny. Right. If you parody something like enough, but then it's like you're still not committing all the way though. It's like, okay, so you can just sort of say it's a parody, but I'm not totally convinced it actually is. That and that will work for many audience members, right? Just close your eyes and pretend it's satire. That kind of works though. It's just sort of gimmicky, right? The thing about that type of property is like if there were more of those, most people who liked the first one probably wouldn't want any more. You know, it would get old fast. For some people, so fast they won't even enjoy it the first time, right? But it's an interesting gimmick to break down. I think whenever you see a piece of media like that, it's very valuable to dig into like, why would someone enjoy this? Like, will this work if you do more of it? Because the money people are gonna assume the answer is yes, and a lot of the time the answer is not yes. So as an exercise, like, is this actually a good idea to do more of? Or again, when a game is popular, you know, you can look at it and go, that was fun and kind of niche. There probably shouldn't be more of it though, and that will be lost on most of the people in the industry. So there will be more of it, and it'll probably be bad. Here we go. Oh baby, I'm getting kind of excited. Okay, I gotta go. Thanks. Bye. If you enjoyed this, well, I'd love to have you back sometime. We do this time every week. We started at the right time today. We ended at the right time today. Good job. Got lots of stuff done. There was gameplay in the stream. Never happens on a Xanipants stream, so don't count on that. If you were free like a few hours ago, that's when we normally start on Thursdays. Love to have you back. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow for some tea time and chat. We were digging into magic system nerding out. I know that's backwards for you. On the tea time stream last Friday, which I'm keen to do more of if you are so willing. So hopefully see you then. Bye-bye. And there's tons of stuff from the stream that we didn't get to. So if you have something to put in the archive parlay form, chuck it in there. Something that went unfinished. We didn't really talk more about the like elemental damage type weaknesses thing. There was a lot in there that I thought was interesting. We can talk about next week, but if you want to throw it in the archive parlay form, I'll answer it this time next week. Bye-bye for now.